the Oklahoma newsroom, you're watching the Press Row. I'm Jenny Carlson here with Barry Trammell. Barry, it is Bedlam week, so of course we're going to start by talking about the Thunder. That's right, a feature-length film for your holidays named
Return of the Deadeye.
Kevin Durant returns, and Thunder fans everywhere rejoice. We knew he was getting close, Barry. Our guys going to practice had seen him out there getting more work, showing more physical abilities out there with that hamstring injury. And then Monday night in Utah, he makes his return. Pretty darn good one, too.
Yeah, you know what? The Thunder's, it's been so long since they've had just complete health all along, you sort of forget how cool it is to have Westbrook and Durant together. Yeah. After last season, what the Thunder went through, and then after just a few games this year, he has the hamstring, but they're fun to watch. I mean, it's definitely Star Wars when those two guys are together.
Definitely so. You know, it's interesting how quickly this script has flipped with the Thunder. You know, it was maybe a week or so ago that there was really starting to be a little bit of unease and panic about this team. You know, obviously everybody knew Kevin Durant being gone was a big issue, but yet you saw concerns with defense, fourth quarter meltdowns, fourth quarter offense issues. I mean, it just seemed like that this was maybe a team that, you know, you had some big concerns about. Now it seems like those concerns have largely evaporated after that, you know, big win on Sunday night. Barry, you were there for that, and then clearly winning that second night of the back-to-back with Durant back. It definitely feels like it's more of an exhale. But there are still some issues that this team has to improve upon. It can't just continue to have, especially the perimeter defense issues in the fourth quarter like it's had.
Yeah, they got to play better defense. And last night, Utah was a solid team, but Utah wins with defense. Utah's not any kind of offensive threat. So that wasn't a great test. I think the Thunder's going to be okay. Will they reach championship level? I don't know. Will they reach elite level? I don't know. They're clearly going to be okay, but that defense has got to be better. And we saw a few things over the last game or two that are nice signs, but that consistency's got to remain and it's got to sustain. And until they play elite defense for 48 minutes, they're not going to be a championship contender.
Well, and I think at this point, you know, now that Durant is back, and to me, I mean, just his offensive flow in Utah on Monday night was really good to see, just from the standpoint of when we've seen him have these injuries in the past and come back. It took him a little while to get going again, to sort of reestablish, you know, the rhythm of his offense. So the fact that he didn't have any of those sorts of signs of rust, I thought was really impressive on his part, but really encouraging for the Thunder as well. But, you know, obviously defense is going to be an issue. This was a string of games when we looked at before we knew Durant was coming back. We felt like the Thunder could get on a little bit of a roll. But, Barry, I think they really have to start to sort of get that confidence so they can, you know, start to hit on some of those issues that have really dogged them through this early part of the season. Get some confidence, you know, get that defense reestablished. I don't know if that's something that they can do once the schedule starts to get a little more difficult. But now they've got some games where now that Durant's back, they could sort of get that going. I think this is a pretty important stretch for them coming up.
Yeah, and you know what? We've said it over and over, but it's still true. There's not been a lot of continuity with Durant and a good chunk of this group. He hasn't played that, you know, he's just played a handful of games now with Enes Kanter and DJ Augustine and Kyle Singler, although Singler may be out of the rotation. And the truth of the matter is,
Thunder fans everywhere rejoice about that, Barry, I just have to say.
Well, he hasn't played a ton of games with, you know, he's played very few with Dion Waiters, hasn't played a lot with Anthony Morrow. Yeah. I mean, in a lot of ways, the whole roster, except for the old guys, except for Collison and Ibaka and Russell, are new to Durant. So there is going to be some adjustment period, and the hamstring delayed that, but now they can get back in the business of getting everybody on track.
That Singler issue, by the way, I was in the arena on the Sunday night for that game, and every time he came in, people were just, you could tell it was like, oh no. And obviously Carmelo Anthony being in the building, such a strong athlete. He just really kind of took it to Kyle Singler, but we saw a lot more Anthony Morrow in Utah. Maybe that's a trend that continues moving forward for the Thunder. You're watching the Press Row. I'm Jenny here with Barry, and it is Bedlam week, so we got to talk a little football. In fact, we got to talk a lot of college football. Barry, this Bedlam game these last few years has really come down to some special team stuff that have been game-changing plays. Obviously, everybody knows about the punt return last year with Tyreek Hill, the questionable decision by Bob Stoops to re-kick to Tyreek Hill, re-punt to him. But, I mean, let's be honest. We haven't seen much out of these return games this year. Is there reason to believe that could be a part of this Bedlam game?
Well, I don't think so, because as you said, OU has basically waved the white flag on punt returns. I mean, they're just trying to get the ball caught with Sterling Shepard. OSU has got one big return out of Jalen McCleskey, the freshman. Had the big return at Tech that sort of sparked the Cowboys. But otherwise, it's not. It's been a lot of, I wouldn't say disaster, but a lot of theatrics. Balls bouncing around, not getting it caught, just, so everybody holding their breath. But if somebody could come through with a big play in the special teams, particularly in the punt returns, because 3 straight games, as you said, 3 straight games, the Bedlam game has turned with a punt return. Jalen Saunders did it 2 years in a row, gave the Sooners a big boost in 13, really lifted Oklahoma out of doldrums in 12, but then last year Tyreek Hill. So a big punt return could really change the face of this game Saturday.
Yeah, and it's interesting, we're talking about punt returns obviously, but the area of returns that OU was so good in a year ago with the kick returns and Alex Ross, I mean, it's just essentially evaporated. Alex Ross still returning kicks for the Sooners, but really if he gets to the 25 where you spot the ball on a touchback, I think the Sooners feel good about that. It's really been odd to see how their kick return has gone downhill. They really haven't got anything out of it. So if they could block a little bit better, you've got to think Alex Ross still has the ability to return it. But, that just has not been there at all. And OSU, Berry, obviously is missing that big kick return, punt return guy. They've had that guy for so long, whether it was obviously Hill, but then, you saw Justin Gilbert do it. They've had a litany of guys and don't really have anybody right now to fill that role.
And what's interesting to me is the OSU kickoff return hasn't been any better than OU's. I mean, it's not. When you're OU or OSU and your fans sitting in the stands, you sort of hope for a touchback, because if it's run out, it's not going to get out to the 25. It's not been a stellar special teams year for either of these teams. Austin Siebert has been a very good punter. He's missed a couple of field goals. Ben Grogan has missed some field goals. He's come through in the clutch, which is a good sign. Signer, the freshman punter, has done a nice job. So the punt games have been probably the best part of the special teams for these teams. If it comes down to a field goal, that would be a very interesting situation.
What's interesting too is this specter of weather hanging over this game. I mean, it sounds like it's going to be cold, definitely rainy situation. We've sort of heard mixed reports on whether we're going to have ice or snow, but it sounds like precip is a likelihood at this point. So how does that play into it, handling these punts, these kicks? You mentioned OU almost waving the white flag on punt returns, putting Sterling Shepard back there. Does David Glidden go in for punt returns for OSU just to be the guy that catches the ball or makes the right decision to let it go over his head? I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see if any of these special teams units have a say in what happens in this Bedlam game. This is the Press Row. I'm Jenny here with Berry. Let's talk about the Big 12 championship, Berry. We don't really know what the College Football Playoff Selection Committee is going to do, but we know how this Big 12 race could come down. It's going to really come down to these games on Friday between Baylor and TCU, and Saturday against the Bedlam rivals, OU and OSU. Who wins the Big 12 could really have a say in what happens that next week. But a lot of big football left to be played.
The good thing for the Big 12 this year is there's really not going to be a big debate. I mean, last year Baylor, TCU both went 8-1 in the conference. Baylor had a big comeback in Waco against the Horned Frogs, won 61-58. In the committee room, there seemed to be a lot of back and forth over which of those teams was more deserving. I don't think we're going to get that this year. If the Sooners beat Oklahoma State, it's going to be the Sooners at the top of the Big 12 list. If the Cowboys win and Baylor beats TCU, Baylor's going to be at the top of that list. The Big 12, for one thing, has made the designation. If there's a tie, whoever won the head-to-head, that's our team. I personally think that TCU is going to give Baylor a good game on Friday. Both quarterbacks are shaky. If Jarrett Stidham can't go for Baylor, if Trevon Boykin can, I like TCU to pull off the upset of the Bears. So Oklahoma State is not out of the running for the title. OSU could be the outright Big 12 champ. With they could win a full game ahead of everyone. And if so, would they have a chance at the playoff? Probably not. They'd need a lot of help. Baylor and OSU at 11-1 probably not getting in because of the non-conference, because of too many teams ahead of them, no conference title game. but clearly Oklahoma State still in the running for the title.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting, and clearly one of the more interesting aspects of it is the fact that that Baylor-TCU game happens on Friday. So we're going to know Friday night what stakes are on the line in Bedlam, who has a chance to do what depending on what happens in that game between those teams down in Texas. And clearly that's a grudge match, Barry. I mean, I think you maybe even said it last week. If Gary Patterson could have lost, if you'd have said to him, okay, you can beat Baylor, but you're going to lose to OU and OSU,
he might have taken it.
I think he would have taken it.
He might have taken it.
I think the animosity is running high between those teams.
He do not like the Baylor Bears.
So at this point, in your mind, the chance for the Big 12 to get a team in the college football playoff largely lies with OU and potentially Baylor?
Well, I mean, I think Baylor OSU long shot for both. I mean, I think not
because of non-conference
schedule. Because of non-conference schedule, because of no conference title game. And the Sooners at 11-1 have a better resume than any other 11-1 Big 12 team because they lost to a rum-dum. They lost to Texas. They ought to be flogged in the public marketplace for it. But if they go 11-1, they would have swept the other three powers in the Big 12. Baylor and OSU can't say that.
All right, lots to watch this weekend. Obviously, all eyes will be on Stillwater come 7 o'clock on Saturday night. Be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.